I came home to find all my furniture missing, and my landlord calmly told me he'd redecorated while I was at work. I stood there in my doorway staring at completely empty rooms, thinking I was having some kind of breakdown or something. My couch, TV, coffee table, bed, everything was gone. Just gone. The only things left were my toothbrush and a single beer in the fridge. Rick, my landlord, was sitting on a folding chair in the middle of my living room, drinking coffee from a paper cup like this was totally normal. "Hey buddy, welcome home," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "I upgraded your place while you were out." I asked him what the hell he was talking about, my voice cracking like I was 12 again. He stood up and gestured around the empty space with this huge grin. "Minimalism is really popular now. I thought you'd appreciate the clean aesthetic. Very zen, right?" I told him I needed my stuff back immediately, and he just shrugged. "Already donated most of it to charity this morning. Your mattress was pretty gross anyway, man. When's the last time you washed that thing?" I couldn't even process what was happening. This was my apartment, my lease, my deposit. I'd been living there for 2 years. I had rent receipts and everything. Rick pulled out his phone and started scrolling through photos. "Look, I even took before and after pictures for my property management Instagram. This place is going to get so many likes." The worst part was finding out he'd kept my PlayStation and my grandmother's antique jewelry box because they matched his personal style better. When I threatened to call the police, he laughed and said good luck explaining how a landlord stole furniture from his own property. "Besides," he added, "your lease actually expired last week. I just haven't gotten around to telling you yet." That's when I lost it completely. I started yelling about how that wasn't how leases worked, how he couldn't just throw away people's belongings, how this was beyond illegal. Rick just stood there nodding like he was listening to a weather report. "You know what?" he said finally. "You seem really stressed about material possessions. This is actually good for you." I spent that night sleeping on the floor using my winter coat as a blanket. The next morning I called my sister Amy, who's a paralegal, and she nearly choked on her coffee when I told her the story. "That's not redecorating, that's theft," she said, "and possibly breaking and entering. Did you give him permission to enter?" We spent the entire day documenting everything with photos and calling every charity in town trying to track down my stuff. Most places said they'd received donations from Rick before, always random furniture and electronics that seemed too nice to be actual donations. One volunteer at Goodwill whispered that they'd stopped accepting his stuff because it felt sketchy. 2 days later, Amy and I showed up at Rick's house with a police officer. He answered the door wearing my favorite hoodie and eating cereal from my bowl. Behind him, I could see my TV mounted on his wall and my coffee table in his living room. "Oh, hey," he said to the cop. "I was wondering when someone would figure this out." The officer asked him to explain what happened, and Rick just casually admitted everything. "Yeah, I took his stuff. The apartment looked better without it." He seemed genuinely confused about why everyone was so upset. I was doing him a favor. Have you seen how cluttered that place was? Turns out Rick had been doing this to tenants for months. He'd wait until they were at work, then clean out their apartments and keep whatever he liked. He had a whole system worked out in his head about helping people embrace minimalism and upgrading their living situations. The police found belongings from at least 6 different tenants in his house. The best part happened when we were loading my stuff back into Amy's truck. Rick's wife came home from her business trip early and saw everything happening. She started screaming at him about the strange furniture and electronics that had mysteriously appeared while she was gone. "I thought you said your mother died and left us inheritance." Rick got arrested that afternoon for theft, breaking and entering, and fraud. His wife filed for divorce the next week. I got my security deposit back plus damages, and Rick's wife let me keep his fancy coffee machine as an apology for her husband being completely insane. She said she'd been wondering why their house suddenly had so much random stuff.